All right, everyone, I am going to get started. I did have you all muted to join, and I would just ask that if you have questions, maybe you save those toward the end. You could unmute at that time and ask any questions. I anticipate this program will take probably 35 to 45 minutes if you have a lot of questions, but I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Sandy Holterhaus. I'm the dietitian at the Collins Aerospace Rec Center. I also teach yoga here, and I train people on the power plate, and that's something I'm going to tell you about as we talk about bone health today. So I'll go ahead and get moving on here. I do want to tell you, if you need to email me, my email address is sandra.holterhaus@collins.com. So if you do have specific questions you want to ask me and don't want to ask in the group, or you can't stay till the end, then you could go ahead and do that. So some of the things we're talking about today, I'm just going to go through some bone basics. Maximizing peak bone mass, and talk about bone remodeling, so you kind of understand that. We will certainly be talking about mostly osteoporosis and osteopenia. I'll go into some exercise strategies for osteoporosis, osteopenia, and then we'll talk about nutrition, supplements, and recipes. So here we go. So some of you have probably seen the human skeleton before. I've got some of the different bones labeled here. We have 206 bones in the adult skeleton. The main function of the skeleton is to provide structure for the body. But it also, if you think about it too, it's a safe haven for our lungs and our heart. Those are up under those ribs, so that is a protective function. And it also acts for a reservoir for our minerals and nutrients in our body. So calcium is largely stored. It's the largest mineral in our body, and it's largely stored in the skeleton, along with some of our other nutrients. And based on our needs in our bloodstream, we're going to continually be taking or giving back those nutrients to the bone, or robbing them from the bone. So that's why I call it a reservoir. And I want you to take from that our skeleton, it doesn't just hang there. It provides that structure, but it's also very metabolically active. So making sure that you know that. And we get a new skeleton about every 8 to 12 years, depending on your age, how quickly you redevelop new bone and lay down new bone and break down the old bone. So brand new skeleton, of course, a little bit at a time, but over that time period, we get a new skeleton. So here's just kind of a cross section of the bone. So we have the periosteum, which is the outer hard layer of the bone. Then we have the cortical hard bone, which is just inside the periosteum. Then we have that spongy layer. I'm going to see if I can move this up here. There we go. We have the spongy bone, or trabecular bone, and that's really the very metabolically active part of the bone. As you can see, our blood vessels run through there. We have the medullary cavity that runs through there. If you're wondering about the epiphyseal plate, that is the plate where growth continues as on our long bones. So as we get taller and expand through our formative years, that's the plate where the bone growth takes place from. In that medullary cavity, we have our marrow. And again, you can see the blood vessels run outside on the bone and into the bone, again, bringing nutrients in and out of the bone as we need them. So another important thing about the marrow is that's where the red blood cells for oxygen, bringing oxygen throughout our body, the white blood cells for immunity, and then those platelets for blood clotting. Those all are formed in that bone marrow. So just moving on to a little bit about bone loss. This first picture here shows normal bone. So you can see it's somewhat porous, but it's pretty dense. And then as we start to have weakening of the bones, or osteopenia, you can see that you're losing or gaining more, it becomes more porous, and the holes or the porousness of the bone is getting larger. And then in osteoporosis, you can see that the bone is much weaker and much more porous. So if you were to do a DEXA scan, and a lot of times they have you do that maybe age 55 to 65 in women, what they're measuring is how many standard deviations you are away from normal bone. So they consider normal bone to be above -1 to -1. Osteopenia, they would diagnose you at that if you were -1 to -2.5, or osteoporosis is -2.5 or less. So that's what they call the T-score. And fractures are also something that can happen and are often the first indicator that we might have osteopenia or osteoporosis. So kind of some of the osteoporosis, osteopenia facts: approximately 1 in 2 women and up to 1 in 4 men age 50 and older will break a bone due to osteoporosis. And often we think of osteoporosis as just a disease of women, but men also develop it. It just so happens that they're probably 10 to 15 years behind us because they have a higher peak bone mass. Now, there are incidences if you're a gymnast or a wrestler, or you've done starvation type diets where you're trying to cut weight, that can make your bones weaker and cause, have younger men or younger women have issues with bone density. Osteoporotic bone breaks are most likely to occur in the hip, the lower spine, the wrist, the forearm. I should also say the ankle. I hear frequently of women breaking ankles as well. By 2025, experts predict that osteoporosis will be responsible for approximately 3 million fractures and 25.3 billion in costs annually. So if there's anything you can do now to help protect your bones, that can help lower the amount of money and hopefully the amount of fractures that we have. Again, breaking that bone is often the first sign that you might have osteoporosis or osteopenia. You might also notice that you're getting more curvature in the back, or that your annual exam, you're measuring shorter in height. So those can be some other indications. And just knowing also that falls are the leading cause of injury-related deaths among older people. So younger people, car accidents; older people, falls are that #1 injury-related death. So factors that affect bone health: calcium and vitamin D, those are the big 2 we always hear of. So making sure that you're getting those in your diet, that's important. Your level of physical activity contributes to your bone density and bone health. Tobacco and alcohol use can diminish your bone health, so you want to watch that. Being female, so that puts you at higher risk for osteoporosis and osteopenia. Having a body mass index of 19 or less, so having low weight and not having a lot of resistance against your bones can contribute to osteoporosis or osteopenia. If you are white, Caucasian, or of Asian descent, that also puts you at higher risk. If you've had high thyroid, a loss of estrogen at menopause, which most of us have when we go through that. Amenorrhea, which is skipping periods when you're supposed to be having them regularly, that will put you at higher risk. Or low testosterone in men, those will all put you at higher risk. Eating disorders, again, I kind of alluded to that. Weight loss surgery, celiac disease, anything that might cause a rapid weight loss or decline, that could cause a decline in bone density as well. And then there are certain medications that will also affect the bone. So just being aware of these. If you're on any corticosteroids, aromatase inhibitors that they use for breast cancer, SSRIs for depression, methotrexate, they treat some cancers, arthritis, psoriasis with that. Anti-seizure medications such as Dilantin or phenobarbital, or proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole or Prevacid. I do see a lot of people that have acid reflux or GERD type issues. And I do recommend that if you can get off those medications that you do, because those could eventually contribute to weaker bones. So what do we do to achieve that peak bone mass? And I know most of us probably listening today are not still in that age under 30 years where we're achieving that peak bone mass. But if you have loved ones, sons, daughters, grandchildren, then you certainly can encourage them to try to achieve that peak bone mass. So genetics play a role in that. That's something important that we all should know. We can't always blame disease or bone loss on not doing the right things, because a lot of times we are doing the right things, but we still might have that genetic predisposition. Boys will gain greater bone mass between age 10 to 30 years, and they peak about age 30. Hormones, girls who begin their menstrual cycles early and have regular periods are much more likely to have a higher bone mass. Nutrition, so children who are deficient in calcium will reach a 5 to 10% lower peak bone mass than the children that are getting adequate calcium in their diet. So that's something to remember. And I'll mention this again, but they are actually recommending supplementation for girls aged 9 to 13 now to help them. They found that that helps them achieve that peak bone mass. So that is something, again, you can pass on to loved ones. Exercise, so sports and physical activity, particularly those that involve jumping, those send vibrational impulses through the bone that can help you to lay down new bone in your body. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I don't know if any of you ever attended the drumstick class here at the rec center. We don't have that anymore right now, but Heidi taught that, and she would often talk about how hitting those drumsticks on the floor, that vibration through the arms helps to lay down new bone. We have another piece of equipment too here that can help you, and I'll talk about that when we get into exercise. So some lifestyle strategies to optimize that bone mass, weight bearing and resistance exercise, and I'll get a little bit more detail on that as well. Doing that can increase bone mineral density and also help decrease inflammation in the body. Vitamin C rich vegetables, so those green and yellow vegetables, also some of them are red, like red peppers, that they have that bright color. They have been shown to help maintain bone density and strength in adults. So these are things that you can do now, today, to help with keeping that bone density. So consuming calcium-rich foods throughout the day. So generally, we don't absorb more than 500 milligrams of calcium at a time. So that is why we want you to try to get that calcium broken up during the day. So whether you're drinking milk or you're taking supplements, trying to do that throughout the day so that you get plenty of calcium into your bloodstream, so your bones don't have to you don't have to rob any of the calcium from your bones during the day. So consuming fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin D and vitamin K2 in particular, are very helpful with increasing bone density. So vitamin D helps you to absorb calcium better, and vitamin K2, it's also known as menaquinone or MK7, reduces calcium loss in the bones because it helps to bind the bone minerals. So those are two important fat-soluble vitamins that we can get. Maintaining a healthy weight and avoiding those low-calorie diets that can increase bone loss. Eating adequate protein has been shown to reduce forearm fractures, so very important there as well. And then eating those omega-3 fatty acids. I'll go into that too, but those fatty fish, those walnuts, those oil seeds, those are all very helpful in helping to maintain bone density. And then also eating foods rich in magnesium and zinc. Those are key minerals that support bone health. And then stopping smoking and avoiding excessive drinking. Those are really good lifestyle changes or things that we can do to help keep our bone mass optimal. So just a little slide here showing you kind of bone remodeling. So as I said, our bones are very metabolically active. So they're going through process all the time. Resorption is removing that mineralized bone from the body, and the osteoclast cells here do that. They break down the bone. And that happens when you don't have enough calcium in your bloodstream. Those osteoclasts are going to come out and start breaking down the bone to deliver some of that calcium into your bloodstream, because we have to keep a normal range there. So moving on, formation is the laying down of new bone, and that is done by the osteoblasts. So we always want to be bringing out those osteoblasts to be laying down new bone. And then the third part of that process is mineralization. So we have to have enough of the healthy new minerals in our bloodstream that support the laying down of bone to actually make the bones harden. So that's really important. So this helps repair micro damage, and then removing old bone and replacing it with new bone. It helps maintain that plasma calcium homeostasis. So we have to keep that in that certain level. So again, metabolically active bones are always taking in or removing calcium from them based on what our bloodstreams need. Again, I mentioned we have a new skeleton every 8 to 12 years. And then just the normal blood calcium range is 2.1 to 2.6 millimoles per liter, or 8.6 to 10.3 milligrams per deciliter. So depending on how they measure it for you. But most of the time you're going to be keeping it in that range. If you're not, your doctor's going to be looking at ways to help you get that back into the normal range. So then moving on to some of the lifestyle strategies. Exercise. So exercise is a big one. We often hear weight-bearing exercise, resistance exercise. So what are those? So weight-bearing exercises, they force you to work against gravity. So anything where you're lifting your feet, so walking, hiking, jogging, climbing stairs, playing tennis or basketball, dancing, any of those kind of things where you're putting a load on, and then that helps with you to get those weight-bearing exercises in. So resistance exercises would be more of the ones that are lifting weights. So calisthenics, maybe you're pushing or pulling or working against gravity. Isometrics, those are static stretches. Those are good as well. Or plyometrics, where you're jumping for maybe short periods of time and intervals. Those are all great resistance type exercises that can help with bone density. So I also want people to just take note that no impact exercises such as swimming or cycling are great for cardiovascular health, but they may not be so great on the bone, because you are not having that gravitational force against you like you would with some of these movements where you're actually lifting the legs or moving the feet. So just knowing that. And then I always encourage people, if you do have osteoporosis, osteopenia, to talk to your doctor. They may not want you to do a lot of forward bending at the waist, or a lot of twisting at the trunk, in fear that you might increase compression fractures in those areas. So that would be definitely something you want to talk to your doctor about, depending on what stage you're in and how brittle your bones are. I do encourage you also to make a free appointment with one of our fitness specialists, and they all know about osteoporosis, osteopenia. They can help set up a program for you to help keep your bones more dense. So definitely something you can do here at the Rec Center. We also, again, want to perform those weight-bearing exercises, anything where you're lifting those legs. We want to perform that resistance training as well. And the other key point here is we want to work on our flexibility and our balance so that we can prevent falls, because we know, again, falls are one of the first times where we might break something and then be actually diagnosed with osteoporosis or osteopenia. So flexibility, moving the joints through the full range of motion. A lot of the weight machines will do some of those things with you. I also just like to put in a plug for Pilates, because that is, I think, one of the best ways to get those joints working and moving through those joints through the full range of motion. And then stretching at the end of the workout after you're warmed up a bit is one of the most beneficial times to stretch and improve that flexibility. And then stability, balance, and vibration exercise are also important. So anything you can do where you're challenging your balance, so standing on one leg, or movement and flow exercises such as Tai Chi or yoga, those are great. And then also whole body vibration therapy, or WBVT. We do that here on the Power Plate. We have the Power Plate. It's available to all of our members to get on. And I also personal train on the Power Plate. It is backed by the Fitness Testing Room. I do 30-minute personal training sessions with clients. So I would encourage you, if you haven't done the machine before and you'd like to just get in and do a half-hour session with me and learn about it, I'd be happy to teach you on that. So what the vibration plate does is it actually is triplanar. So it vibrates up and down, side to side, and back and forth. So as soon as you step onto it and turn it on, you are starting to experience the vibration, and that is twitching your muscles anywhere from like 30 to 50 times per second, which helps definitely with balance. And then if you add some exercises, some things that are going to put some stress on the bones, we can actually really work to help with improving osteoporosis and osteopenia. And what they found in the studies is that women who did the vibration plate, they had postmenopausal women in this study, 3 times a week for 12 minutes, actually gained 1.5 to 3.8% in their bone density. So a significant amount of bone density by using the Power Plate. So when I take someone through a lesson there, we do stretching, we do balance and core work. We also do some strength and massage type work in a 30-minute session. So just a plug in for that. Again, you can always get on and try that machine on your own as well. So moving on to the nutrients, calcium is that big one. I pulled this information off the National Institute of Health, the NIH website. They have what they call health professional fact sheets out there, but anyone can go out and pull information. So if you are trying to determine how much you need a day or what foods are top, as giving you good amounts of that nutrient, then you can certainly look out there and find information. So most of us are going to be somewhere probably between 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day. Females, we go to 1,200 milligrams earlier at age 51, and males over age 70, we want them to be at 1,200 milligrams a day. So as you can see, some of the big hitters are going to be those dairy products, the yogurts, mozzarellas, milks. Those are all up there at the top. Cheeses. There is fortified orange juice out there that's good. And then a lot of fish, such as sardines that are canned with their bones. The bones, as you know, have calcium in them. In the human body, they also have calcium in there in the fish body. And if they're canned with the bones, that provides a lot of calcium as well. So I won't stay on this page a lot. I've got some more slides here on calcium. So just kind of my recommendations on supplementation is that the best practice is to try to get your calcium throughout the day with your diet, with your food. I know we can't all do that depending on what type of diets we eat. But if you can't and you want to take a supplement, or your doctor has recommended a supplement, I recommend that you never take more than 500 milligrams of calcium at one time. So if you're taking 500 in the morning, then you might want to wait and take another 500 in the evening. And I don't want you to exceed 1,000 milligrams per day, unless your doctor would be recommending that for you. And the reason is because we have studies have indicated that we have an increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and dementia when we get too much calcium in our diet. So We do want to watch that, try to find that sweet spot. So calcium, as we know, can cause, kidney stones, but it can also calcify our arteries and make them harder, which can lead to some of these risk factors here, or these diseases. So if you're taking a calcium supplement with added vitamin D or K, again, I told you those were those fat soluble vitamins. It's best to eat those with your fattier meal of the day, because when you take fat in with vitamin D and K, they travel with that fat and get absorbed more easily into your body. So that would be the reason you'd want to do that. Calcium citrate is a little more expensive, but it can be taken with or without food. So that can be convenient, especially if you're taking other medications, mineral supplements, or that type of thing as well. That way you don't have to work on timing that as much. And other calcium supplements should be taken with food, but separated from other minerals, because they can interfere with mineral absorption. So as I said, calcium's the number one mineral that you have in your body. That's in the highest amount. And some of the other minerals compete for the same receptor sites in your body on the cells. So if you have a lot of calcium going in at one time, they can outcompete the other nutrients that you're taking in. So that's why you want to try to separate those when you can. Again, I mentioned calcium supplementation for 9 to 13-year-old girls helps increase that peak bone mass. And middle-aged and older women who are vegans can decrease the risk of hip fracture with calcium supplementation. So that's another good reason to supplement. So, if you're not sure what to do, please speak with your doctor. Generally, they don't want you to exceed more than 2,000 milligrams a day. A lot of them are recommending 1,000, and then getting some other calcium through your food if you're getting that much, or 500 if you're getting a lot of calcium through your food as well. So, my page got off here a little bit, but what if you don't do dairy? There are still great ways to get calcium in your diet. So a cup of calcium fortified orange juice is about 350 milligrams. So they do have it in different brands. I don't usually see it in the Tropicana brand at the stores, but Hy-Vee does have their own brand with calcium fortification. So if you're looking to find ways to bump up your calcium, that would be a good way. A cup of soy milk or other nut milk, you'll want to look at the label, but most of those are fortified with calcium as well. So you might get up to 300 milligrams there. I have on my Pinterest page the recipe for sardine salad, and I'll get you guys hooked up with that if you're interested at the end here. But that's a great way to supplement and get some more calcium in the diet. Almonds, you could have a couple handfuls twice a day, and that would get you more calcium. Kale, if you are a kale eater. Edamame, I find it's really easy to add frozen edamame to soups or stews or casseroles without really anyone in your family knowing that you've done it. So that could be a secret way that you could sneak in a little bit more calcium into the diet. And then a lot of our cereals are fortified. For example, 1.5 cups of Cheerios has 130 milligrams of calcium. So I just showed you a day here with, close to 1,400 milligrams without using any dairy products. This is some information that I pulled from Consumer Labs. I have a subscription to Consumer Labs to try to keep up on supplements. And one of the things I like about Consumer Labs is that they are always testing different product, but they're looking at purity, and they're also wanting to look to make sure that what they say is on the label is actually in the product. So these were some top scoring supplements for calcium and calcium plus supplements. So if you're looking for just a calcium supplement, calcium citrate, the Solara brand was highly recommended. And I haven't looked up, I don't know where you can buy these. If you shop on Amazon or online, I'm sure you can find them all online. The Citrical and the adult gummies from Kirkland, that is Costco's brand. those were both highly rated, and those have calcium with vitamin D3 in them for absorption. And then, sorry, this got off too here, but this is a metabolic maintenance. That's a calcium and magnesium powder blend that was highly rated. And then this calcium plus from GNC, also highly rated. That has calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D in it. And then this last one, Life Extension Bone Restore, has vitamin K2 added to it as well. And again, that's that vitamin that helps you keep the calcium in your bones and not rob it to your bloodstream. So those are some highly recommended ones. You certainly can write some of those down if you're interested in that, or get in touch with me and I can go through some with you as well. So moving on from calcium to vitamin D, which is the other one we always hear about, generally it's good to not just start supplementing if you don't know what your level is, but vitamin D is one of those things you can get tested on. Generally, if you go through your doctor's office, it's probably going to be pretty expensive. Some people go through online labs and do their own test and send it in and can get their status there. But generally, they measure that in nanomoles per liter or nanograms per milliliter. And just for example, I've only seen it in nanomoles per liter around here. But if you're above or below 30, that's very deficient. If you're 30 to below 50, they still don't feel like that's adequate for health. If you are above 50, they generally consider that good for bone health and general health. But if you get to be above 125, that is generally a toxicity or vitamin D toxicity. I did put a little information down here on vitamin D toxicity. It can cause nausea, vomiting, weakness, frequent urination. It also might progress to bone pain and kidney issues. Can contribute to those calcium stones if you have high levels of calcium in your system as well. So knowing your vitamin D status can really be a good first step. I did put a picture here. If you do, small children or adults develop or don't have enough vitamin D, you can have what they call softening of the bones or osteomalacia or rickets in children. So vitamin D guidelines, frequently if you're supplementing, they'll show you on the label in both IUs and micrograms. So the dietary guidelines show you here. Most of us in the dietary guidelines are 15 to 20 micrograms per day. But it's been suggested, because they haven't updated these values for quite a while, that we actually may need 10 to 25 more micrograms per day than what these values suggest. So I tell people probably you want to be somewhere around, maybe 30 micrograms a day, up to, 40, 45 micrograms per day. And we can make some in the sun. I'll go into that. But I kind of take the guideline of adding more vitamin D during the winter months. So maybe mid-September to October-ish, start adding a vitamin D supplement and then supplement with it until I can get back out in the sun more in the spring. And the sun in the wintertime here in the Midwest is not strong enough to really give us the increase in vitamin D that we want. Plus, our bodies are usually covered with clothing, so we're not absorbing or making vitamin D from the sun. So vitamin D food sources. Again, if you're not a fish eater, you're probably going to want to supplement vitamin D, especially in the winter months here in the Midwest. But as you can see, some of the best sources here are fish. The people that are most risk for vitamin D deficiency are going to be people that are over age 65. If you have darker skin, you don't make vitamin D as well. If you're obese or don't get a lot of sun exposure, you're going to be at higher risk for vitamin D deficiency. So if you're working in an office all day and you're not getting out during the week, that is also another good reason to supplement with vitamin D. So just a little quick information on vitamin D2 versus D3. They both contribute to increasing blood levels of vitamin D, but D3 might be a little bit better absorbed. Why would you want to do vitamin D2? Because vitamin D2 is from plant sources. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, you may not be getting the vitamin D3 sources from the plant or from the animal food. So the vitamin D2 is called ergocalciferol. And again, that's plant sources, plant milks, orange juice, cereals that are fortified, and mushrooms and yeasts that are exposed to sunlight or UV radiation helps bring up the vitamin D level in those foods. So those can be good sources. If you are an animal eater and you eat a good amount of proteins from animals, you can certainly get some good vitamin D3 from there. D3 is called cholecalciferol. Cod liver oil, trout, salmon, sardines, eggs, beef, liver, tuna, and cheese are great sources for that D3. And moving on, vitamin D from the sunshine. It's made in the skin when it's exposed to sunlight, and it is actually the very best way to bring up those vitamin D levels. Midday is the best time to get out, and being in shorts and short sleeves, and up to 30 minutes 3 times per week for light-skinned people, and probably higher amounts of time for the darker skinned people so that they can make more. The farther you are from the equator during the winter months, you're going to probably not get enough vitamin D, so that you will want to supplement again during those cooler winter months when the sun is farther away from us. And in theory, wearing sunscreen might help reduce or may reduce the ability to produce vitamin D3, but they haven't shown any effects or impacts on blood level. So it's unclear whether frequently wearing sunscreen, and protecting yourself from those UV rays will also reduce the vitamin D levels in the long term. So they haven't seen anything that it does decrease that. So. And I just wanted to make the case for adding cod liver oil to your diet. Cod liver oil, this is one that I take. I might take it 2 or 3 times a week, about a teaspoon at a time. It's extracted from the the liver of codfish. And 1 teaspoon will supply 30% of the RDI of vitamin A and 11 micrograms of vitamin D. So it's a good source of vitamin A and D. Vitamin A helps promote eye, brain function, skin function as well. Vitamin D also, again, supports that calcium absorption in the bones. It may help reduce inflammation due to being a rich source of omega-3s. It can help reduce joint pain and pain from osteoarthritis, again, because of the omega-3s. It may help people decrease the risk of age-related macular degeneration and glaucoma, because it provides some moisture and fats to the eyes. Can also help reduce the risk of heart disease, high triglycerides, high blood pressure. It may also improve symptoms of anxiety and depression, because we know those healthy fats getting into the brain are good for the brain. And as another benefit, helping to heal stomach and gut ulcers. So might be something that you want to add. This one has actually got a little bit of a lemon flavor to it, and certainly you can shop around, but it doesn't have a fishy taste to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it's not a bad one to take. So Beyond calcium and vitamin D, there are some other macronutrients of concern, and those would be those omega-3 fatty acids. You want to make sure that you're getting those into your diet. The cod liver oil is a great way to do that. They have anti-inflammatory effects on the body, increasing calcium absorption, and they stimulate those osteoblasts, those cells that build a new bone to come out and work. Protein, we also want to make sure we're getting enough protein in the body. We know that protein provides the structural matrix of bone, so the joints, the collagen, all of that is supported by protein. Protein also increases intestinal absorption of calcium, and they found that 60 to 83 grams per day decreased the risk of hip fracture in older women. They also found that varying your protein sources, so having some animal sources and some vegetarian, vegan sources such as beans and legumes, also decreased fracture risk. And also consuming over 95 grams of protein per day was associated with higher forearm fracture risk unless you're increasing also the calcium and the vitamin D foods and supplements. So you want to make sure you're doing that. Also, if you're increasing protein or doing a high amount of protein, you want to make sure that you are getting more water in your diet also to help with the filtering of the protein through the kidneys. Moving on, some other nutrients of concern, vitamin C. I've got the RDA there, the recommended dietary allowance, 75 milligrams for women, 90 milligrams a day for men. It's a required cofactor for forming collagen. It's water-soluble antioxidant. It has been found to be low, actually, in postmenopausal women who have osteoporosis. So vitamin C may be another thing that you want to supplement if you aren't getting, a lot of the colorful greens and yellows and some of the reds, or orange juices, citrus fruit, those type of things that also give us a lot of vitamin C. Vitamin K, it works with the vitamin D to help mineralize those bones. So we want to make sure that we're laying down a lot of minerals into the bones to help keep them strong. The adequate intake for vitamin K1 is 90 micrograms for women and 120 micrograms for men. And K1 is known as phylloquinone. Higher vitamin K1 status has been linked to lower fracture risk. So important to get those Ks in, the green leafies. If you are on a blood thinner, warfarin, coumarin, some of those, your doctor will want to know how much vitamin K you're taking in, because vitamin K works against the blood thinner. It clots your blood. So you want to make sure that your doctor knows how much, so they know what prescription amount to give you of those blood thinners. And then also you want to be very consistent with your eating so that you're, you don't get out of balance there with the vitamin K and the warfarin or coumarin. So there's a whole lot of other vitamin Ks, but the other one that we found to be very important for bone health is this vitamin K2 or menaquinone. It's also known as MK7. It's synthesized by gut bacteria, but unfortunately, they don't really release it into our guts. They keep it in their guts. So we don't get a lot of vitamin K2. The only other really good source is fermented soybeans or natto, and we don't eat a lot of that over here in the United States either. So this one might be worth supplementing as well. It inhibits the osteoclast activity, so breaking down of the bones, and it helps keep more calcium in the bones. And that is the main thing that they're liking this MK7 for. And they've found a dose separate from the K1 recommendation above of about 180 micrograms per day. They found that helped preserve bone mineral density in the lumbar spine and the neck of the femur in postmenopausal women. So I don't want you just to go dose yourself with this, but do talk to your doctor or call your nurse and find out if that would be something that they might recommend for you to take in addition to any other supplements that you might be taking or medications. So minerals of concern, this one, magnesium is another one that we want to make sure we're getting enough of, and up to half of our population is not getting enough magnesium. It's widely available in a lot of different foods. So if you eat a wide variety of healthy foods, you're going to get a good amount of magnesium. But let's just show you here. This is again those NIH fact sheets, the National Institute of Health. Anyone can look those up. But pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, almonds, those are all really good. Spinach, cashews. So a lot of nuts are really good for contributing to intakes of magnesium. We know that higher magnesium intake is associated with higher bone mineral density. Again, it's found in those dark green leafies, nuts and seeds, and the recommended dietary allowance there is 400 to 420 milligrams daily for men and 310 to 320 milligrams a day for women. And I just put a picture here in the center of Calm. That is one of those magnesium supplements that can also help to kind of de-stress you and help you sleep. So that might be an alternative for some people, especially if you're not eating the best diet. Generally, it has about 325 to 350 milligrams, I think, in 2 teaspoons of the Calm supplement. So that might be something that you'd want to look into if you're not getting enough through food in your diet. Phosphorus is another important nutrient that we want to get into our body. It's found in a lot of our protein-rich foods. So if you're eating animal foods, you're probably likely getting a lot, but you can also get it in sources such as beans. So getting phosphorus in the diet is very important. And again, yogurt's a great source. Milk, salmon, scallops. So I think maybe you're taking from this presentation that getting some of these fatty fish in your diet might be healthy as well. And then again, you know, lentils, cashews, kidney beans. So some of those beans and legumes are really good to get in the diet too. And then just 5 more nutrients, trace minerals really that I want to mention. Boron, they recommend 3 to 4 milligrams per day. A lot of times you might see these if you're taking a good supplement. You might see these added to that supplement. But boron, you can find it in prunes, raisins, dried apricots, avocados. It may be needed as supplementation in postmenopausal women. Copper, found in meat, seafood, nuts, grains, and cocoa. 0.9 milligrams per day is what they recommended. That the average daily intake of copper is actually higher, so most of us don't need to worry about that. Zinc, again, found in animal flesh, dairy products, seeds, and nuts. 8 to 11 milligrams per day is the recommendation, and most people get enough through the diet, but those over 60 may not absorb zinc as well. It's not recommended to exceed 20 milligrams per day. And the other thing I tell people is that copper and zinc compete for those same receptor sites in the body. So if you get a cold, a lot of times it's been recommended that you take zinc or zinc lozenges. And I recommend you just be very careful on the amount that you take and the number of days that you use it. Because if you are increasing the amount of zinc in your diet, you are probably displacing some of the copper in your diet. So just being cautious with that. Manganese, so widely available in our cereals, nuts, shellfish, beans, chocolate, tea, cinnamon. Again, isn't it nice to see chocolate on some of these? And the recommendation there is 1.8 to 2.3 milligrams per day. And most people do get enough in their diet. It is not recommended to exceed more than 11 milligrams per day. So if you are taking any of these super duper supplements out there, you might want to just check the levels on those. And then silicon is also another one they recommend. We find that in our whole grains, cereals, carrots, green beans, and beer. 20 to 30 milligrams a day are recommended for bone health. Supplementation may be needed for postmenopausal women and non-beer drinkers. So this is probably the first slide that I've ever had beer on. So if you need to get some more silicon in your diet, then that might be a way to do that. Just I think a couple more slides here. Bad to the bone. Having a lot of sodium in your diet can cause excessive calcium excretion through the kidneys. So we do want to watch that salt shaker and the processed foods that we're eating that may have a lot of salt in them. Sugar, the main problem with sugar is that when we eat a lot of sugar, we're not eating the healthier foods in our diets. So we need to make sure that we are getting enough of those healthy foods and having those sugary treats, more seldom in our diet. Soda, they found that drinking 7 or more colas a week reduced bone mineral density. So if you are still drinking a lot of cola, if you can start to cut down on that, might be a good thing to do. Caffeine, they found that can leach 6 milligrams of calcium per 100 milligrams of caffeine ingested. And you guys are probably going to ask me, but I don't remember exactly how much is in a cup of coffee, but generally I think about 130 milligrams in a cup of coffee. So if you're drinking a lot of coffee, you could be leaching some calcium from the body. Also, some of your black teas are going to have a little bit more caffeine in them. Chocolate certainly has caffeine in it, so watching those. Alcohol, if you are a chronic or a heavy drinker, that can lead to low bone mass and increased fracture risk and probably more falls as well. And then red meat can leach calcium from the bones. So I just recommend for red meat, it's also not as good for the heart, that you limit that to no more than 2 servings per week. And then good to the bone. So I've got a few recipes listed here, and these are all from my Pinterest site. I have over 400 and some recipes out on my Pinterest site now, and I have a section out there called Good to the Bone. So if you do want to follow me on Pinterest, I have the link down here. It's that https:// and then the 2 forward slashes www.pinterest.com/Sandra Holterhaus 0169. I said // at the end there as well. And I've got just listed here a few: salmon patties, chia seed pudding, baked cod casserole, simple sardine salad, which I mentioned before, and a super seed nut butter that you make with whatever nut butter you're using, and just adding a lot of seeds to it. So that is the end of my presentation.